Welcome and thank you for joining the American Cinematheque tribute to Lynn Shelton. I'm Gwen Deglise, Head of Programming for the Cinematheque. I'd like to invite you to visit our website where you'll find clips and audio tape compilation of Lynn Shelton's Q&A at the Aero Theater when she came to visit us last year and back in 2006. This tribute is moderated by Jim Hemphill, and thank you for watching.
My God. I like you.
I like you too.
Here's the thing I love about television. I love directing actors. I live for it. It's my favorite thing.
It's 9 a.m.
Oh, God, I know.
So I knew I really wanted to make art with other people and in relationship with other people.
I
thought I'd seen some pretty weird shit in my life.
I didn't go to film school and I wasn't told this is how you make a movie. The traditional way is putting up obstacle after obstacle in front of the most important work on the set, which is the actor. No matter how gorgeously lit it is, if the acting doesn't resonate, doesn't feel real, it's not going to work.
Stop. Please, don't touch me.
This hunger that people have to see authenticity, incredibly important to me, no matter whatever the method is.
Hey, it's the American way, right?
You know about that?
Calm down. Get on this ride. It's gonna be a good one.
Do you think I wanted a daughter like you? I never wanted you in the first place! What you just did was reckless. You just put this show and everyone who works here at risk.
I always want it to feel like flesh and blood human beings on the screen, because that's the only way that it really resonates with me.
Sometimes you have to scorch everything to start over. And after the burning, the soil is rich and life can grow there.
You know, always knew I was going to be an artist. Never thought in a million years I'd be able to make a living at it. And I was fine with that. You know, I'd always part-time teach, I'd part-time edit, I'd whatever, you know, do to pay the bills and then just keep making my art.
Harvey Danger.
Oh, his name is Sean. I'm here to tell you that you'll be fine.
I have always been at my happiest and most deeply joyful when I'm making my work. And it's really lucky because I've worked on all these shows where people like each other and the work is fun and it's good. It changes everything.
I'm proud of you.
Okay, everybody. Hi, I'm Jim Hemphill. I'll be your moderator for this panel devoted to the work of the great Lynn Shelton. And I want to thank all of our panelists here. We've got Marc Duplass, John Hamm, Eddie Huang, Gillian Jacobs, Maron, Kevin Murphy, Michaela Watkins, Kerry Washington, and Reese Witherspoon. Welcome, everyone.
Hi, Jim.
Hi. So I guess I wanted to start things off by talking a little bit about Little Fires Everywhere, because they sent a link to all the people watching, and it's really an incredible show. And you know, it's so complicated and complex. And Kerry and Reese, I'm curious, as producers, how did you know that Lynn was the right director to take all that on? Because there's so many different, it's, you know, it's just such an ambitious, audacious show. And so how did you know Lynn was the right person, and what were your initial conversations with her like?
First of all, I wanted to say I'm so moved by hearing her voice.
Yeah.
It's kind of shattering me a little bit because she was such a wonderful, gracious, sharing artist. I think that's one of the things that really resonates with me about the first time meeting her is Kerry and I were in a conference room and she came in and she just found the connective tissue between her life and each theme in the show, and was so vulnerable and honest about motherhood and her relationships and her sexuality, and I thought, there's just nobody who lays it out there like that in a meeting like that. And they also came visually prepared with this book. And yeah, and I know, Kerry, if you want to talk about that as well. Or
yeah, I remember us being really stressed out because we had a problem. You know, we were making a show about a lot of things with a lot of different points of view, and we wanted it to be spectacular. And until the moment that she walked into that conference room, we had a huge problem. And she just was the answer. You know, she came in and, like Reese said, she identified with everybody. Like, that's how big her heart was that she identified with every character and could see through every character's point of view. But also came with this beautiful bound book of the visual language of our show. And we were like, thank God. Thank God for her.
Well, you know, since you brought up your initial meeting with her, maybe that's a good place to start with everybody, is if you could talk about when you first met Lynn and what your first impressions were of her. Marc, was the first time you met her on your podcast?
Yes, and that was quite a monumental conversation. I think it laid the groundwork for everything that happened. It was a long and exciting and difficult but amazing arc. Yeah, that was the first time I met her. I had seen a few of her movies, and I saw pictures of her, and I was intrigued. Obsessed, and I had her on my podcast, and you know, between me and you, I mean, I felt very connected to her, and I think it was mutual, and that sort of began this sort of creative relationship that became a deeper relationship much later. But yeah, that was the first time, and it's amazing. You know, I still have the shirt that she wore, but you know, let's not cry. Not much crying. Let's limit the crying.
Well, let me ask you before I move on to other people. What was the transition from meeting her on your podcast to actually working with her on Maron? How did that come about, that she directed you on the TV show?
I had a certain amount of control over that since the show was my name. And I wanted, I told them, I said, we have to have Lynn Shelton direct as many episodes as possible. And like, there was a lot of directors sort of lined up, and I'm like, is there any way we can ever direct all of them? Would that be good? Not even thinking that she couldn't do it, because she was directing a million other things. But yeah, it came directly from that. I just wanted to work with her as soon as possible. And then she did a few episodes of Maron. She actually acted in an episode of Maron. No one really talks about that, but I worked with her as an actress in the 4th season of Maron as well, because I was able to cast her in a part as well. Had that kind of power on that show that nobody watched. It was very exciting.
Michaela, how did you meet Lynn?
I first met Lynn on the sidewalk at Sundance. I'd just seen one of her films, and I think it was Touchy Feely. I'd seen Your Sister's Sister the year before, so I was sort of fangirling a little. And then like a year went by, and she found me on Twitter, and she said, I just saw you in something. I'm kind of wondering if maybe she heard me on your podcast, Marc. She either saw me in something or she heard me on your podcast. And she was like, I can't believe I turned down directing Casual and for the first season. And so I said, well, I'm dying to work with you. And then she came and directed on the 2nd season of Casual. And I remember I was working with Katie Aselton, who happens to be married to Marc Duplass. And she was guest starring on our show. And Katie said that she felt like she was witnessing 2 soulmates meeting.
Oh.
It was really, I knew when I saw her on the sidewalk that I needed to know her more. And then she found me. Oh, she did text me or whatever, tweet at me, like, guess who's coming to work on your show? And I was so excited. And then when we came together, it was really the beginning of our working relationship. We would work together a bunch more, but also just a big friendship.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Marc Duplass, you go way back with her as well. When did you first meet Lynn?
I met Lynn on the set of a tiny independent film I was acting in Seattle. She showed up as the volunteer set photographer because that's just who she is. And she had made, 2 small films at that point, and we instantly hit it off, and we share a love of actors and putting them first in the process. And, I just threw out this idea to her. I was like, listen, if you ever want to make a small movie together, I would just love to be a part of it, do whatever. And I think about a week later, she called me. I was in an airport with my family and on my way back to LA. And she said, I got an idea. 2 guys, they challenge each other. Will they have sex with each other to prove their dedication to their own senses of manhood? And I was like, I think we have to do this. And then, she came down to LA and we workshopped it, and it was just like camp. I mean, like $10,000 and 10 people later. And that deep love of actors, that deep love of being on set was the same from that moment to the last moment I worked with her, which was on the biggest budget thing that either of us had worked on the set of the morning show, looking at each other from across the room with that feeling of like, how did we end up here and how has this happened? But same person, just striding across the room with that big hug, that love sandwich that makes you feel like you can't do anything wrong, you can't fail, and she was the best at that.
Well, I was curious about the morning show and how your relationship with her was different and how it was the same on there, because when you're dealing with something like that, how much room is there for you to sort of still have the kind of improvisational work and things that you did with her on the indies? I mean, did it change, or was it sort of the same? Or
the good news is we had Kerry, who's a fantastic writer and showrunner on the morning show, who actually created words that were really worth saying, as opposed to our early movies. We didn't know what we were doing, so we would just improvise them and try and figure it out on the spot. But at the end of the day, Lynn is who she is, and she loves that feeling of naturalism and the ums and the ahs that make it feel super human, But
so she'll make you say those words, though, right? She'll make you say those words. If there are words written and you start doing other things, she'll be like, "Can we just do
let's just get one of those things, But at the end of the day, it did feel like there was this big apparatus, we're part of a big machine. But, I remember being in the middle of that control room with one of those episodes, and the scene was kind of centered on me, and she was watching from Video Village, and I was like, oh, this is the same thing.
Kevin, how did you meet Lynn, and what were your initial impressions of her?
I met Lynn at the, I have an early memory of seeing Lynn for the first time. She was pretty involved with the music scene as well. She loved going out to shows. I remember seeing her in this dive bar. It's called the Blue Moon. It's this 80-year-old dive bar, and we're seeing this band, The Lights. And I just remember her dancing in the corner. And this was 2008, and around that time she had, this is right after she had made Hump Day. It was around this window of time, and she, through them, had reached out to me to be involved in the $5 cover project. And so we met for coffee. And then I just remember we just talked for 2 hours, and I was telling her stories and just kind of cracking up, and had a pretty immediate, just made you feel comfortable, at ease. And she has that laugh, and everybody can kind of stop and they can hear it if they wanted to. It's this infectious, disarming spirit. And I just remember just after that, and it was funny because the project was just all musicians mostly, and she just made everyone feel super comfortable and at ease, and she just and welcomed everybody's ideas.
So, John, when the Mad Men episode that Lynn directed was, I think, her first episodic job she ever had. And, at that point, you had been doing the show for several years. Obviously, you knew this character inside and out. What were you looking for at that point from your directors, and what did Lynn give to you and bring to the show? What was that experience like?
Well, it's interesting. I think anybody that's been on a show for an extended period of time knows that one of the hardest gigs is being a guest director, because you're coming into these families essentially, and you're trying to tell people things they most likely already know. And so it was season 4 by this time that Lynn came in, and a lot went on in the episode. And you know, just piggybacking on what everybody else, I don't know if I'm pointing at the right people, but there was a sense, and I'd been familiar with her work. I had seen Your Sister's Sister, which starred Rosemary DeWitt, who was also in Mad Men. And so I was familiar with the work, and it was one of those things where I was like recognizing that, oh, the show has some traction here because we keep getting these kind of cool kids to come direct it. And Lynn was definitely one of them. But the smartest and the best thing that she did, and then hearing all of the stories connected to her, and then maintaining a friendship with her after the fact, was that she brought a sense of like, isn't this fun? Like, we get to do this. And the more that I learned about Lynn and her, you know, not going to film school, but just like thinking this and her relationship to the music industry and Seattle and the Pacific Northwest and what have you, was like, she led with this sense of like gratitude and enjoyment, love, and like, aren't we lucky? Like, this is so cool. And that's the other thing that happens when you're on a show for a long period of time, is you can kind of get, lazy's not the right word, but you can get a little sense of like, they're doing it again. Like, and having someone come in with that brand new sense of like, holy shit, you guys, this is going to be so fun, is reinvigorating in a way when you're on episode 77 or whatever it is. And, you know, you especially for me and my character, like you're working 12-hour days, day after day after day after day, and you're midpoint of the season and you're wiped. Having someone come in there and with a brand new, fresh sense of like sunshine was a delight. And that's why we maintained Words with Friends for so long.
Mm-hmm. Gillian, how did you meet Lynn?
She was hired to direct on Love, which is a show I was on. And before we started work on it, she asked for my phone number and she called me and she said, there's a sex scene in this episode and I wanted to talk to you about how we're going to depict female pleasure in this episode. And I had never had a director want to have that conversation with me. I'd never had a director think about that. And that was the moment I knew that she was someone special and different. And that carried through the way she shot that scene and every other scene. She wound up directing some really pivotal, important episodes of that show, including our series finale. And I also vividly remember that when I got to set for that sex scene, it was the dimmest lighting I'd ever had, which I was so grateful for. And it was the fastest I'd ever shot a scene like that. And I thought, wow, she's really taking care of me and the other actor. And the conversations that she wanted to have, not just about that scene, but every scene, I think made the show immeasurably better.
Eddie, how did you meet Lynn?
Well, I notoriously didn't get along with anybody on Fresh Off the Boat. And I really didn't want to sell the show. And up until about 3 days before the pilot was shot, I had not signed my contract to option the book to 20th. And while I love Johnny Davis at 20th, I just wouldn't sign because I was like, I don't really love the script. I don't love what's going on. And I remember there was like a giant earthquake and I was like in Hollywood for the first time, staying in some hotel like near the Fox lot. And it woke me up in the middle of the night and I looked at my email and I was being like, I was going to be sued. And my attorney, we were so broke at the time. My best friend from law school, who was my attorney, was in the same bedroom as me in the other bed. We were sharing a room. And I was like, yo, do you feel that earthquake? He's like, what earthquake? And I was like, dude, it's LA. There's fucking earthquakes. And I showed him this email. I'm like, yo, I also think we're being sued. And he was like, well, I mean, man, you haven't signed your deal. It's 3 days before the pilot. There's promissory estoppel. Like, yeah, they're going to sue you. I was like, shit. So then I signed the deal for the show. And it was very funny because I pull up to like set and development. And everyone's like, you're going to love it. You're going to love it. And it was like this weird feeling of, I mean, I think everybody on this panel has led their life and chosen this life because in some way you've been misunderstood at some point. And when you've been misunderstood for so long, you get used to people's faces that don't understand you. And I was just like, you don't get it. You don't get it. No, like, I don't love this. I don't want to be here. I'm not going to love it. And like, I don't want to be famous, you know? And they were like, you're going to be famous. It's going to be great. And I finally meet Lynn. They're like, this is Lynn, the director. Everyone was so worried about what I was going to say because I'd been just constantly like not following social etiquette, I guess, like, or expected social etiquette. And I met Lynn and she's like, hello. And my big thing with people was first to like get to know who you were. Like, where are you from? Like, I didn't care about your movies. I didn't care about what happened. I want to know who you were. And she fully plugged into it. And we just talked about Seattle and like how I used to want to go to UW. And she was the only person, besides probably Constance, that saw me as a whole human being, understood why I was struggling so much, and was like my friend. And I remember she was like, do you have anything that like really matters to, like, what is up, what's really bothering you? And there was a discussion at the time about whether the word chink would be said in the pilot episode of Fresh Off the Boat. And I remember saying to her, I said, Lynn, like, this episode, this moment is probably the biggest moment in my life, because as an Asian American, we're always told like, you don't face direct physical racism. And I don't know if that's true for other Asians, but for me, in third grade, I was thrown on the floor in the lunchroom, called a chink, and told to get to the back of the line, which was like, it changed my life. And the decision to get up and fight changed my life. And I think, you know, it was really important to me that it wasn't sold as a joke and it wasn't just given away to laugh at. And Lynn was the first and probably only person that like really understood that and fought for it. And it was like, sorry I'm going so long, but she just said, she basically gave me this feeling and said to me in a way like, do not worry, it's that moment will be preserved. And I trusted her. And I think I wasn't an actor, obviously, but like for anyone working in this type of art, you just want to know your feelings will not be sold for cheap. And she always made me feel like I would be taken care of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, remembering that episode, you know, one of the amazing things about Lynn Shelton as a director is she's so good with younger actors. She's so great with kids and teenage actors, which makes me think again of Little Fires Everywhere. There's so much incredible work by the younger actors on that show. And Reese and Kerry, you know, I don't know if either of you or both of you wants to address this, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how Lynn worked with the actors who played your children on that show and how she worked with them and you to sort of facilitate an environment, to create an environment that would facilitate such incredible performances.
Reese should start because she has more kids on the show.
On the show.
Yeah, only on the
Maybe in life. Oh.
No, we're even in life.
We're kind of even, yeah. I just will never forget the finale. We had this finale where all four of my children and I have this moment where we all have to lose it. And we all know what that moment in your life is with a parent, where you cross over a line or you say something to your parent, your caregiver, or whoever it is, and you will never return. And I just remember the kids weren't there. They just couldn't, they weren't there yet. They all had it within themselves, but they were so polite that she had to, literally, I was like, she and I were such a team. And I was like, okay, I'm going to talk to them about their physicality, and you're going to talk about them about their vocal stuff that they have to do. And then let's just be free. Like, let's be free enough to have them scream and yell. And if it's not big enough, I want you to come in. And she was like, she was just incredible at making those kids feel in their bodies, in the scene, and feel free enough to lose control. And that's the highest compliment I have for any director. But then I realized, okay, well, this was the crazy part, is that we did the whole thing. We got all the kids and they lost their shit and it was so great. And then I realized I turned the cameras around and I had to do my side of it. And I'd forgotten that I had to do something. And she was like, she just took as much time with me as she did with them. and pushed me just as hard as she pushed those kids. And I think we ended up with something really genuine because she made us all feel free.
Do you have anything to add to that, Kerry?
I think, I was thinking about what Eddie said, and there was a safety with her, like you trusted Lynn, and we trusted her, and the kids, kids smell that, like they smell whether they can trust you or not. And so she created, like Reese said, a really safe space. And I think on our set, that was so important because there were a lot of cooks in the kitchen. You may not guess this, but Reese and I are very opinionated producers, and our producing partners are very opinionated. And the showrunner was very opinionated. And so there was always like a team at Video Village with all of our different opinions about what it was supposed to be. And she would walk onto set and sort of look you in the eye, and you knew like that you were safe. You knew that the thing that mattered most, that she was going to help you get there, and that you were going to walk away with that intact. And you might check all the other boxes of the studio and the network and the producers and but like the thing that mattered most, the essence of the moment, was going to be there. And I think she did that for the kids without even giving them that language. They didn't even know. They just knew, I'm safe. I'm in a zone. I can play.
Michaela, something Eddie was saying about Fresh Off the Boat and how Lynn sort of, wasn't going to trivialize things or make them a joke. It made me think of your show, because on Casual, one of the great things about that show is it's hilarious, but it's also, there's this very interesting tonal balance where it's also very serious, very poignant. It kind of walks this very realistic line between comedy and drama. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you and Lynn kind of navigated that tone together and how she helped you kind of keep everything authentic.
I mean, Lynn was a perfect match for that show, for that reason that you just said. It's sort of, that's the sweet spot for Lynn, is that there's just really no inauthenticity in any of her work. Even if she's doing a big, broad comedy, it's just, everybody is so grounded. She likes real people. And we both speak that language. So she was already like just a perfect match, and we all knew it. So when she showed up, it was the fastest shooting we've ever done. I mean, I think we were out by 4 p.m. every day. It was like, we were like, can we get her for every episode? But she is so efficient, and she meditates. I think she just knows, she trusts her body. If her body says she's got it, she's got it. I thought, is this gonna all edit together? I mean, you didn't do that many takes, and you didn't even get that many angles. And it was some of our best episodes. But I think that it was navigated because she and I inherently just spoke the same language. I don't know if it's because we both come from, I mean, I lived in the Northwest. I lived in Portland for, in the 90s when she was there. I was doing Fringe theater. She was doing Fringe theater. We were like musicophile adjacent. We both, I think, have such high musical aspirations if we weren't doing what we were doing in this life. And we both dabble, and we just have the same language. I mean, she went into filmmaking and I went into comedy. I think that's where we split. But at the base of it, there was just a real shorthand. So I think as long as nothing you did was in any way telegraphing any kind of phoniness in any way, shape, or form. By the way, I mean, Eddie kind of said it as well. Everybody said it as well, is that, and she said it to me one time, because we had to do these really visceral sex scenes that were so animalistic. And she did, like Gillian was saying, like she called me at home and said, let's talk through these. And I was like, this is so wonderful. And my character, it was about my character sort of taking charge of her sex life. And so she was taking charge in the bedroom, and what does that look like and feel like? And it was just so nice to take that apart and talk about it so that every single thing you did had meaning. It wasn't ever about presentation, ever. It was always about what story are we telling? What are we saying about this character? What are we unveiling right now? What is she discovering in herself? So that every moment was so alive. I mean, it makes sense that everything she does has so much improv, because that's how it felt. And And I couldn't believe how she could hold this incredible space for me to do anything, and that I never felt foolish. Like Marc has a really good ability in his podcast to hold this space that people just like barf truths at him. And Lynn also has this thing that you just barf truths out of your body. And she said, years and years and years later, she told me that she had done this film where she had done all these sex scenes, and she said, I did it because I never wanted to ask an actor to do something that I wouldn't do myself. And I thought that was pretty rad of her.
Gillian, I saw you nodding a lot during that, and your Love is another show that's like very interesting tonally, and one of my favorite episodes of that show is one that Lynn directed, where the one with your father, played by Daniel Stern, and and it's very, very funny, but very, very uncomfortable. And what kinds of conversations did you have with her doing that, about that relationship between you and the father character? How did she direct all that?
Well, the strange thing about that was the writers on the show unknowingly wrote my real father as a character. And so it was a very strange experience for me emotionally, because my dad is dead, and it was Daniel Stern was sort of playing a version of my real father. And once again, she insisted on rehearsal with Daniel, which doesn't really happen that often on TV. And she handled it also sensitively, but like Michaela said, she also had such an incredible pace on set that you never felt like you burnt out in those emotional scenes. I remember in that episode, she wrapped the whole day by lunch, and I remember the line producers scrambling to come up with a scene for the second half of the day. And I just also thought that was so cool for a female director to be that good, and to watch her earn and command the respect of the crew. And you saw then when she came back for later episodes that the crew was excited that she was directing, and that there was an energy on the whole set of people knew they were going to do good work. It wasn't going to be belabored. She knew what she wanted, and there was light at the end of the tunnel. You could maybe go home for dinner, which is a big motivator sometimes. Like John said, when you're in the middle of like a TV show. So she just, I was so grateful that she was directing that episode with my dad.
Well, I spent the last week or so rewatching a lot of Lynn's TV work, and I was just amazed by the consistency of it. And I don't mean just that it was consistently good. I mean, like, the consistency of her personality coming through. Like, there's no such thing with Lynn Shelton as a sort of work for hire. It all feels like it's coming from her so much. Her personality is so evident in all of it. And I was wondering if, whoever wants to weigh in on this, maybe Marc, Maron, you could kick it off. What do you think it is about Lynn's personality that made it sort of impossible for her voice not to be there in anything she did? You're muted.
Muted, Marc.
Okay, all right, everyone, take it easy. I think my experience with her was she was so disarming, and there was no way around that. That, when you were in her presence, you could fight it for a second if you want, like, what's this about? But eventually you're gonna be yourself, and you're not gonna know why. And you're looking at this person that is completely engaged in whatever the hell you're doing. And that was sort of like her voice. She could bring the best out of people because you like everyone said, not only did you trust her, but Jesus, did you want to impress that woman or what? You know what I mean? Like, you wanted, like, when I did shit with her, all right, granted, she was an easy laugh. I mean, anyone can fucking make her laugh. But I mean, she was the best laugher. So there was, I think the part of her tone is that everybody who works with her really wants to show up for her. So somehow or another, the authenticity and the intimacy she's able to create and the connections she's able to get, between actors has a vibe to it because she's so fucking open and so disarming and so engaged in the work. And there's no way to fight that. I don't know why you would, but not everyone's like me.
I had this one thing occur to me after we made Your Sister's Sister together, which is that I've been a part of some movies where either critics or people have said, like, Would the girl in that movie really go for Marc Duplass? You know, like that kind of energy. And I remember thinking about that. I was like, oh, this is me and Emily Blunt. Like, how's this gonna sell? How are we gonna do here? And I never had one issue with it. Nobody ever brought it up in that movie. And I think to your point, Jim, about a feeling of consistency, the way that Lynn falls in love with the actors and the way that she portrays them, I think that subconsciously telegraphs to the audience, and they just get on the ride with her and they fall right in love with those people too. And it brings you a little closer. And she does use a lot of close-ups because she loves faces and she loves those nuances. And so I think she just brings you in her little laser beam of love into them, and you get a little closer as part of it.
And I'll say this about that as well. There's, for those that are watching that are thinking about starting a career or nervous about the technical, I mean, everyone's, you know, that starts directing is like, I don't know what lens to use. And it's the least important thing about a director. There are technically proficient directors that are masters of, you know, mise en scène and all the things that you learn in film school. And then there are people who are just confident that they know how to tell a story and are confident enough to use the 250 other people who are there to make you look good and trust them to do their job. And I watched a lot of Lynn's work that way, of like, this is a person that is so confident in her ability to tell this story in a way that it's going to resonate with you, and therefore gain the respect and the love of these other director people that have gone through this whole other thing. Like Edgar Wright was one of Lynn's biggest fans, and Edgar's about the most technically proficient. He's, you know, cutting into inserts and this and that and the other, and everything's scored to a T and storyboarded out. And he was just so taken with Lynn's work, as we all have been. And I think that there's something to be said for people who are thinking about walking down that road, that it's very possible. Like if you lead, as we've all been saying, with like this confidence and this emotional connection to the work, that you can really create something special without necessarily having to have the $100,000 of USC bills.
Well, here's a good example. Like I did 2 comedy specials with her, and you know, that's me. It's all me. It's my work. And you know, she was a big fan, obviously, and she came to the Comedy Store with me, you know, all the time. To see her sitting in that dark, shitty place in the corner, you know, I would look at her to make sure she was laughing, and I was doing the bits. And over time, you know, it's very hard for a comic to trust anybody with their material. Like I didn't want to take notes from anybody. I didn't want to take notes from anybody, you know, when I was acting, because I never thought I was that good at it. Bradley Whitford once said that when you direct an actor, his first reaction is "fuck you," and then it's "I suck," and then it's "okay." So, you know, I grew to trust her, but to what John's saying is, like, there were times where she had a sense of what she wanted to do with me as a director, because she understood what I did as a comic, and there was an intimacy to it. There was something, you know, raw about it. There was something sort of, you know, kind of brokenhearted and open about it, and she wanted to get that. So my direct experience with her, but you can feel her presence in those specials, because like the first one in Too Real, she had to figure out this whole way to shoot the opening so it established the intimacy of who I was. And then the next special, for the last one, End Times Fun, we were supposed to shoot at this big theater in Boston, but she couldn't do a shot that she wanted to do without moving too many chairs and without them getting weird about it. She needed this shot to get in, so there was an intimacy created, and they couldn't do it. So I said, well, fuck it, we won't do it there. And we moved it to LA. So she had this vision that she really committed to. She was, you know, the most sort of loose-seeming control freak in the world. But don't be fooled, man. She knew exactly what she fucking wanted, and she was going to get it one way or the other. And usually she would have you charmed to the point where it would be easy. But with me, it was a little more difficult. But you know what I'm saying? Is that's why I think you could feel her. Is that it's like what John was saying, is that she knew what she was going after. You know, you didn't know that she knew, but she knew.
Yeah, like Marc was saying too, about using the tights and then creating space. I felt like one of the things I really learned and loved about Lynn working on the Fresh Off the Boat pilot was that she was able to find what every character was insecure about or really wanted to be understood about. And as an audience, every character's reality is different from our reality. And I think the director writer is just trying to bridge those two realities. And when there's a moment where like the audience like wants to judge this character or this emotion or this insecurity, Lynn will kind of create space. Like she'll pull you kind of away with a wider shot. And then when the character's revealing like the source of what it is, why they're misunderstood or insecure, she pushes you in. So it's like when you want to make a judgment that's more stereotypical, she prevents you from it. And then when she wants you to lean in, she pushes you in. And I think that is a really like unique thing I didn't even understand until like watching more of her stuff.
I wanted to say one thing that I had a memory just now as y'all were talking, and you really inspired me when you're saying like about her instincts about how to storytell. And I remember this day on set, and I don't even remember how it happened, but there was somebody using sign language on set, and she signed back to them. And I said to her, "How do you know sign language?" And someone very close in her life, I don't know if it's okay to say. Is that okay to say, Marc? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think so. Sure. Her son.
Her son was hearing impaired, and she spoke sign language fluently with another actor on the set. And I remember thinking there were all these layers to her storytelling, but she always found a way to express herself that was about communicating the heart of things and the emotions of things. And it made me see her in a completely different way, in that I'd always seen her as a mother. I'd always seen her as she was, very candid about where she was in her life and her relationships. She loves to talk about Marc. And when I saw them together at the wrap party, you've never seen two people more in love. And it was really beautiful. But it was this layer that I was like, this is a piece of who she is, that she had to communicate in a way to someone so close to her from the time that they were born, and tell stories to that person, and express herself to that person, and show the world to that person. And it came through to me in that moment. And that was something super personal that it just really resonated with me. And that was something she carried and didn't share with everybody, but it was just a very casual thing. But her enthusiasm to storytell, even through sign language, and make someone else feel seen and understood was profound to me.
We've got some audience questions here that I'm going to go to, so we can squeeze a few in while we've got time. The first one is, what is something that you learned from working with Lynn that you carried on into future projects? I guess this is for anyone who has an answer for it.
I was just going to say, like, somebody asked me, is there anything that she, like a piece of advice or anything? I don't remember who was asking this, but since she died, I often think like, well, what would Lynn do? Because she had such a great fucking attitude all the time. And it has genuinely helped me. I mean, I'm sure I could tell you some great tidbits or some, I'm sure as soon as we hang up, I'll unlock some incredible memory of the most profound thing she's ever said. But the thing that I do keep coming back to on the daily is I get kind of miffed about something or pissy about something, and I go, what would Lynn do? And Lynn would get mad. I mean, Lynn would get upset about things. It's not like Lynn was just walking around just, Zen Buddha. She would get mad at things, but it looked a lot like this. It would be like, she'd be like, and I'm just so mad about it, but, oh, well, you know what? What are you gonna do? And like, I just hear that in my head all the time, where I'm like, I mean, it just sucks. Oh, well, what are you gonna do? And I just go through that, like, through all the colors of that every time. And so I always end out with like, what are you gonna do? And that's what I take away from Lynn.
I take away the need to really to stay open, that to not be afraid of that, you know, and to go through life with a certain amount of vulnerability and curiosity and excitement, and yeah, the negativity thing, you know, like I'm a very, you know, defensive person in a lot of ways, and, you know, through our personal relationship, but also through the working relationship, I realized, like, what am I really, you know, defending? You know, what is this shit? So the benefits of staying open as a comic, as an actor, as a human, I think was something that she was really able to do without thinking about it. And like Michaela said, that, you know, it wasn't that darkness avoided Lynn. I mean, it would come on her, but she would just, you know, be able to dissipate it with her superpower of light.
To me, there's the inherent legacy of all the stuff we're talking about, of how much she loved people and led with positivity. You know, that's definitely true. But like the just the pure stamp of what her life was, which is, this is a woman who chose to live in Seattle, did not make her first feature film until she was 40 years old, refused to move to Los Angeles in order to become successful in the industry, and just blazed the fucking path in her own way. And it's one of the more inspiring stories. And she did it also. She didn't have to chop off heads in order to do it. You know, she was cruising, and then she was lifting people up along with her as she went, you know, from the Seattle film community. And that is, I think, one of the more inspiring things. You know, John, you were talking earlier, if there's other filmmakers out there watching this, I mean, I think that's really like, that's something to remember.
And she was a great leader. I mean, she was like, you know, when she wanted to make a movie, I mean, she would make a movie. I mean, like, we're talking about TV, but I mean, like you're saying, is that she was like a great leader, because she was a pure collaborative artist, and you barely knew she was leading, but she got shit done. I mean, I remember when she put together that book for Reese and Kerry. I mean, you know, she was in that thing. She was like, she put together this big picture book that she loved the book. She's like, I hope they like this thing, but it was like a masterpiece, right?
It was really beautiful. I haven't seen anything since from any director. It's sitting on my desk. It's sitting on, like, I keep it on my desk. It's just like, you know, you can be the answer to somebody's problem, like Lynn was to us.
But also that she could come onto a series, you know, 2, 3, 4 seasons in sometimes, and just harness the entire crew, that they would just be madly in love with her. By the time she left, they were just like, oh, they would, you know, and she would bring a lot of people onto her cruise on films, you know, she would sort of collect people as she went. And, but they just, I mean, and for a woman, I'm sorry, but, you know, for a female director to be able to come in and really take the reins and without ever having to be bullish or shouty or put on any kind of airs, she was completely herself all the time. And then people just stepped in line because they believed her. They believed her.
Why wouldn't you?
Okay, the next audience question says, I'd love to hear Kevin Murphy's reflections on how Lynn impacted his songwriting or approach to performing live.
I was just thinking about, just to follow up what everyone was talking about. I remember Lynn telling me how in her early days, when she first started, she would write these proposals for grants, and then she would just, you know, just thinking like, you know, this would be crazy, this would be awesome to make a film. And then she would get it, and she'd be like, oh, well, shit, now I got to make a movie. I wonder what I'm going to make. You know, she was just kind of fearless with her drive, and it just ties into, because the project I worked on with her, it wasn't really actors, it was local musicians. And just to follow up on the theme of how she was able to bring people together, she brought in, you know, music scenes, there can be kind of bubbles sometimes. And she brought people in from everywhere, and just really there's friendships I have through that project that's now like 11 years ago. I think if you're creative, it's someone like Lynn, it's really inspiring to see someone watch or just trust the process, collaborate. You have to have a lot of faith. You have to have faith in other people. You have to have faith in yourself. And what I liked about her kind of, she knew what she was doing, like Marc said. And there was that element of improv to get the real. And so, all of us had to act, and we'd never done it, but she made me believe for some reason that I could do it. And I think that stuff transcends just being creative. As far as musical connection with Lynn, as you guys all know, she was such a major part of her life. I remember just backyard bonfires and her singing and getting everybody to sing. And she was fearless. Like, she would always be up front of when we would play shows, she would always be up front dancing, and then she would, and we sang so much. She was such a good singer, sing beautiful harmonies. And so eventually she's like, she'd always call me Mad Dog. She'd be like, Mad Dog, I want to get up on stage. I want to come sing with you. And it wasn't weird. It wasn't like, because she had such a wonderful voice. And so I loved having her up there. I loved singing with her. And she would have these bonfires in her backyard. Her birthday is coming up at the end of the week. And she'd always have these birthday parties in her backyard. And that's one of my fondest memories, just sitting back there and talking. You get into the heavy stuff with her, and then you'd sing songs, and she would sing at the top of her lungs, and it just felt good and freeing. And that's, I think, what you should feel like as an artist. So I'll always remember that, and I'll remember what a good friend she was, and was always someone I could talk to when things were heavy, or even just to goof around. So.
Well, we're running low on time, but I wanted to finish by asking Marc, Maron, and Reese and Kerry about your feelings upon hearing that Lynn was nominated for an Emmy for directing Little Fires Everywhere, because it really was, I mean, in my opinion, it's one of the greatest hours ever of television, that episode she was nominated for. And I was wondering where you each were when you heard that, and what your just emotional response was to it.
Well, let the showrunners talk first.
She's just amazing. She deserves everything. I mean, she really deserves every bit of praise, and just for everything that she did. I mean, and what I think is really an achievement is all the stuff that people never see. It's about taking care of the crew and making sure they feel good, and making sure they feel like they've got their best work on the screen, as well as the actors and the writers feel seen and heard. And she just worked her tail off too, with the special effects department and the editors, and picking the perfect 90s music. We talked about that constantly, but she just did it all. And she was a real leader. And yeah, I voted for her.
Yeah. To have her pour her whole soul into that show, and to be acknowledged in that way, felt really powerful. But also, I thought a lot about what Marc was saying. Like, she really did blaze her own path, and she, like, I think we were so honored that she said yes to us, that she wanted to do our show, because she said no to so much. She only did what she really, really loved. And so I also think, like, the acknowledgement, the nomination is meaningful to young artists who are nervous to follow their own path, it's like a great reminder to stay true to your own calling, to your own directives, to that inner guidance in you as an artist, and to not worry about what, anybody else says you should do, that you have to do you. And that's what she did every single day. And so the acknowledgement is an affirmation for everybody, and particularly women directors, to have that agency and an empowered vision of like, I can really be myself and do what I want to do. And there's room for that in this industry.
I was furious when she got the nomination because she was dead. And, you know, it's a weird thing when you do this dumb thing we all do because we love it and we want to make good things. You know, whenever award seasons, any of them, all 12 of them, you know, come around and you've done something that you love and you really fucking did it. And then the list of nominees comes out and you're like, you got to pretend like you don't give a fuck when you're not on it, except to people that you like. So I've been through that. She's certainly been through it. I sat with her at the Indie Spirit Awards, keeping a fucking good face on. So like now she gets this big one and she's fucking dead. It's ridiculous. So it was a bittersweet thing. I was so fucking happy for her, you know, but you know, I wish she was alive, you guys.
Yeah, I know. When she got nominated, I could hear her going, thanks.
Yeah. Finally.
You know, I'll say something as well, and it's just come to me right now in looking at this entire panel. But like, this is a person who is able to hang with Academy Award winners and comics and musicians and TV network writer producers, streamers, cable. I mean, I don't know anybody else, male, female, old, young, anybody that has the leverage, the pull, the respect, the authority, you know, in all of those worlds. There's some guys, people that are, you know, have a hand in a couple pies, but Lynn's coolness and fascination with all of that was another thing that I think is pretty spectacular. I didn't really recognize it until right now. I was like, oh yeah, I guess I just kind of intuited it, but now I'm like looking at it and counting the squares and being like, holy cow! Like she had a sway over a lot of radically different people.
Mm.
Pretty cool.
It is cool.
Well, I think we're running low on time. Let's see. I guess try to see if there's one good one. Here's one last one I'm going to squeeze in. Does anybody know what are any of Lynn's hidden talents?
Well, she was learning how to play the ukulele and it was going pretty good.
I mentioned earlier she was a great singer.
Great singer.
She always looked good in hats.
I was going to say she could wear a hat.
That's for sure.
She always had this cool hat on.
I'm telling you, it's not to be fucked with. Hats are not for everybody.
Everybody can wear a hat like she could wear a hat.
You can over hat sometimes,
yes.
And
Sometimes
we've
a hat
all
on a
been
hat.
there.
She has very specific hat. It's a very specific, that black felt hat.
The hat work was on point.
Yes.
All right. Well, this has been great. I feel like time has just flown by. And I want to thank all of you for coming and sharing your memories of Lynn. You know, she was a fantastic director, and I really encourage people to go to the Cinematheque's website and see the list of episodes she directed and where they can find them, because I watched them all this week and they were all fantastic, and it's been a real pleasure. So
she loved talking to you too, Jim. She loved talking to you. She did.
We love you, Marc Maron. We love you.
Thank you. I love you too.
Love you.
I love you, Marc Maron.
Love
Thank
you
you
all.
for doing this, everybody. And thank you for everybody for listening.
Yeah,
Yes.
thanks for tuning in, for honoring Lynn.
And thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us and for celebrating Lynn tonight with us. I hope we'll welcome you all again at the Cinematheque. And to the audience, thank you for zooming in. I'd like to invite you all to join us tomorrow for a conversation with Werner Herzog. And thank you for supporting the American Cinematheque. Thank you. Good night.